I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States
the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Well, there you have it. President Trump is the 47th President of the United States. He's gotten off to a rollicking start with dozens of executive orders. I'm Tom Fitton, President of Judicial Watch, here with our social media update. Thank you, as always, for joining us during this historic period as what I would say to be one of the most corrupt presidencies in recent history ends. And as Trump says, the new golden era, I hope, begins. And there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic. And of course, Judicial Watch will continue to do the heavy lifting for the rule of law, for our constitutional republic, no matter who's president. But President Trump seems to be simpatico with the views and the concerns not only of Judicial Watch, but millions of Americans on the crises facing our constitutional republic. So I'll talk about that. I will talk about the corrupt acts of President Biden on his way out that President Trump may still have to deal with, specifically his pardons. We have a new lawsuit on sanctuary policies, the lawless subversion of the rule of law by left-wing politicians in cities and states who are trying to aid and abet and protect illegal aliens contrary to law. I'll go through the executive orders of note with you. There's so much to get through in this update, so let's cut right to the chase. President Trump had his inaugural celebration. He was sworn in on Monday, January 20th. It was too cold outside, so he brought it inside. My wife and I were going to go watch it in person, but that was canceled. So we joined all Americans in watching it on TV. And here are a few highlights from President Trump's inauguration speech after he was sworn in.
Those who wish to stop our cause have tried to take my freedom and indeed to take my life. Just a few months ago in a beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again. Instead of taxing our citizens to enrich other countries, we will tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich our citizens. We are establishing the External Revenue Service to collect all tariffs, duties, and revenues. It will be massive amounts of money pouring into our Treasury. My administration will establish the brand new Department of Government Efficiency. I will also sign an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America. I will also end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender into every aspect of public and private life. It will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female. I will reinstate any service members who were unjustly expelled from our military for objecting to the COVID vaccine mandate with full back pay. And I will sign an order to stop our warriors from being subjected to radical political theories and social experiments while on duty. A short time from now, we are going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and we will restore the name of a great president, William McKinley, to Mount McKinley, where it should be and where it belongs.
Well, there you saw President Trump made really no retreat or engaged in no retreat from his campaign promises. And we issued a statement in response to his inauguration. Judicial Watch did. And as I highlighted, the left tried through lawfare and every other trick in the book, including trying to kill him. I mean, let's go to that video about how close how close it was in terms of his life nearly being ended. You remember this video?
Take a look what happened.
Truly a miracle that he survived, and I applaud him for acknowledging the role of divine intervention in protecting him. And it should be readily apparent that this is a miracle he survived. And I do hope he's able to do great things as a result of it. And I don't see why that would be a controversial statement for either Democrats or Republicans. The left tried through lawfare and every other trick in the book to derail this electoral victory, stop it from happening. But the voters essentially found Trump innocent of his political opponents' fake charges. Trump persevered and triumphed in the courts as well in the court of public opinion. Let's hope that his success puts an end to the practice of lawfare for good. Democrat-allied prosecutors and judges did their best to derail this presidency, but the people have spoken, and now the reversal of the failed and frequently unconstitutional policies of the Biden administration are now being reversed. America has reason to hope again for a country that is led by the rule of law. President Trump's first-day executive orders and his executive orders since then have correctly addressed the border, the rule of law, and the constitutional crises created by the Biden regime. And his pardons and commutations related to the January 6th defendants are fair, just, and brave. Judicial Watch remains ready, willing, and able to help and sue for government accountability as we continue our mission to ensure clean elections, secure borders, and transparency in government, and to thwart the left's attack on our constitutional republic through their censorship of free speech and abuses of power. So we're not going to stop, and it's pretty clear President Trump isn't going to stop. Here's some video of him beginning to sign the executive orders just a few hours after the inauguration at the parade celebration afterwards here in Washington, D.C.
Why don't you say what I'm signing?
Sure. The first item that President Trump is signing is the rescission of 78 Biden-era executive actions, executive orders, presidential memoranda, and others.
And then he went over to the White House before he went out to the inaugural balls to sign dozens, I think, executive orders.
This is actually an executive order designating the cartels and other organizations to be foreign terrorist organizations.
That's a big one.
Yes, sir.
People have wanted to do this for years. So they are now designated as terrorist organizations, foreign. And Mexico probably doesn't want that. But we have to do what's right. They're killing our people. They're killing 250, 300,000 American people a year. Not 100, like has been reported for 15 years. It's probably 300,000.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't watch those that pardon signing, because that was pretty extraordinary stuff. So my wife and I went to the ball. We were kind of like stuck and couldn't watch that. But that was, he had, you may have seen pictures of it, he had dozens of reporters there as he's going through, commenting as he's signing these various executive orders and actions, including the pardon and commutation of the sentences of the January 6th targets of Biden's selective and abusive prosecutions.
So this is a big one. Anything you want to explain about this? We hope they get them. We hope they come out tonight, frankly.
They're expecting it. Approximately 1,500 people. Six commutations.
Were there any cases you did not commute or pardon of people?
We're looking at different things, but the commutations would be the ones that we'll take a look at.
Yeah, so many Americans are now free who should be free, both of the burden of having been prosecuted, even though they're technically out of jail. It's no fun to have that on your record. And those who are in jail, they are no longer in jail. My friend Brent Bozell, who runs the Media Research Center, his son got caught up in this, was prosecuted. And here's Brent's tweet on this. My son Zeker, far left, and 6 of his January 6 buddies released from captivity last night. He's home with his wife and 3 girls this morning. Thank you, Mr. President. So those pardons, as I noted in our statement, were wise and just and brave by President Trump. The January 6 prosecutions, even of those who may have committed a serious crime, including assault on the police officers and such, were all compromised by politics and selective prosecution by the Biden administration, who admitted that they were prosecuting these individuals not because of the crimes they committed, but to diminish or thwart the First Amendment activities of other Americans. They were trying to scare Americans from participating in our nation's public life, as is their God-given right, and they were doing that through unprecedented prosecutions for this civil disturbance on January 6th. You know, I attended the Kavanaugh hearings, for example. Remember Justice Kavanaugh, those hearings where the left was showing up and violently interrupting and threatening and intimidating senators time and time again, assaulting people throughout the Capitol, assaulting staff, etc. You know what they all got? The equivalent of parking tickets. Instead, these folks got treated like terrorists, quite literally like terrorists. And of course, it was designed to interfere in the election process, ensure Americans wouldn't participate or dispute future elections, curtail our First Amendment freedoms. And the next step Trump should take, or his people should take at the Justice Department, or as I've highlighted, President Trump himself can appoint a special prosecutor or prosecutors directly. They should investigate those who targeted these January 6th defendants. The basis and the political basis, ethical basis for these prosecutions. Did they know what they were doing was wrong and abusive? And if so, there could be criminal or other liability for it. That should be on the list. So that's my at least initial impression of the January 6th prosecutions. And then on top of that, he filed all these executive orders that rein in so much of the damaging activity of that's been happening not only during the Biden administration, but from 40, 50, 60 years back, that began with Lyndon Johnson, for instance, his executive order that essentially mandated a race-based affirmative action, naked quotas and discrimination, that hasn't been rescinded for decades, and Trump rescinded it. And so here are the executive orders. I think we printed all of them from the website, so there's got to be at least 60 plus here by now, right? I think it's 50. It's like 50 something. And so I pulled out a few of them. Just I want to go through them. So this is the one he signed first off in the video. Initial rescissions of harmful executive orders and actions. And I encourage you to go to the website of the White House, thewhitehouse.gov, and look at all the executive orders. They're accessible. They're pretty easy to find. It says executive orders and actions on the first page, as I recall. And just go through and read them, and you can see the detail that I may not be able to get to here. But this first order that he had signed, or at least one of the first ones I thought he had signed, it goes through, as he says, dozens of crazed Biden orders to install really neo-Marxist and socialist authoritarian style efforts by the Biden administration to control, expand control over our liberties and our lives and our economy and our freedoms. I mean, I'm going to give you a few of these executive orders that were rescinded just in one order. Ensuring a sustainable public health workforce. Sustainable, you know what that's code for, left wing. Reforming our incarceration system to eliminate the use of privately operated criminal detention facilities. So he wants to close prisons. This is what Biden was trying to do. Creating a comprehensive regional framework to address the causes of migration. Remember, that was where Kamala was made borders are. Promoting access to voting, which means increasing opportunities for voter fraud. That's the left way of describing that. Eliminated or rescinded by President Trump. Establishment of the Presidential Commission on the Supreme Court of the United States, and that was a commission designed to undermine the Supreme Court of the United States. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in the federal workforce. DEI mandates. White House initiative on advancing educational equity for Black Americans. More communism, Marxism, catalyzing clean energy industries and jobs through federal sustainability. I mean, go through and look at the list here. And Trump, in the stroke of a pen, undid Biden's strokes of the pen in a way that gets this country back on track in terms of the rule of law. The money saved as a result of rescinding these EOs is going to be enormous. And that means less government spending, and less government spending means less inflation necessarily. So that's another good thing. Here's another executive order. Hiring freeze. That's pretty easy to understand. Regulatory freeze pending review. So the enormous numbers of regulations imposed by Biden that has taxed the economy to the tune of well over $1 trillion. That was the last number I saw. There it is. Regulatory freeze pending review. All of that's been shut down, at least temporarily. Protecting the meaning and value of American censorship. This is a biggie. As Trump likes to say, this is a big one. What does this one do? It says that it's the policy of the federal government. I'll read it. The 14th Amendment states, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, that's the key phrase, are citizens of the United States wherein they reside. And there's similar language in the federal law. The federal law essentially just mimics that very language. Among the categories of individuals born in the United States and not subject to the jurisdiction thereof, the privilege of United States citizenship does not automatically extend to persons born in the United States when that person's mother was unlawfully present and the father was not a United States citizen or lawful permanent resident. When that person's mother's presence in the United States at the time of said person's birth was lawful but temporary, such as but not limited to visiting the United States under the auspices of the visa waiver program or on a student, work, or tourist visa. And the father was not a United States citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time of said person's birth. So essentially, if you're here illegally or just passing through and you have a child under the plain meaning and language of the Constitution and federal law, as highlighted in this executive order by President Trump, which is an extraordinary development in terms of our understanding and application of immigration law and the laws of citizenship, you don't get to make your child a citizen by having them here in the United States. They remain a non-citizen. It is the policy of the United States that no department or agency of the U.S. government shall issue documents recognizing U.S. citizenship for persons as I described above. Now, the left is furious about that. A federal court judge went ballistic and temporarily restrained President Trump's ruling, EO in that regard. But I want to talk more about this because it's my view that based on the text of the Constitution, the original understanding of what the phrase there, citizen, what is a natural-born citizen and subject to, as I say, all persons born and naturalized in the United States, not as I say, as the Constitution says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. What does that mean? And subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Go back to that. Go back to the Constitution there. All persons are born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state where they reside, wherein they reside. So why do they have that caveat there and subject to the jurisdiction thereof? What does that mean? Well, obviously with the 14th Amendment, the key issue at the time, given the federal law, the Civil Rights Act, passed right after the Civil War, was to provide citizenship to slaves and their descendants. So if you're a slave, you're here in the United States, they wanted to provide citizenship, and obviously this is a way to do it. But at the time, they also recognized, given the fact we're a constitutional republic, not a feudal state, that just because you're born here doesn't mean that, especially if you're, for instance, an invading army or a foreign diplomat, I mean, you generally have, the court has, I would say, not the court, every person here in the United States has, the government has some type of jurisdiction over, right? Even a diplomat. But no one would say a diplomat's son born here or daughter in the United States, given the fact they're not subject to the jurisdiction and the kind of the broadest understanding of the word, would be deemed a citizen. And if that's the case, why would an unlawfully present person be deemed to have the same type of allegiance to the United States as a citizen or even someone permanently domiciled here, meaning having a green card? So as I look at this, it looks like the precedent, because there was this famous Supreme Court case that evaluated this, that seemed to suggest that only citizens that, or at least the ruling on this specific phrase, was contingent on the parents being lawfully here, even though they were non-citizens. So if you're here lawfully for 10 years, you have a child, even though you're not citizens, the court found that you are, your child, gains the benefit of birthright citizenship. And the idea that it would be controversial to deny birthright citizenship to illegal aliens having children here is just, to me, a head scratcher. And I think, despite the caterwauling, as I like to say, of the left about this EO, I think it's going to be, I'm not sure it will be upheld, the analysis by the Supreme Court, but I think it's going to be upheld by the Supreme Court. I could be wrong. There could be some weak sisters on the Supreme Court, and they, on the conservative side, who get too nervous about this. I don't know what the usual suspects in that area will do. But this is a pretty straightforward legal analysis and constitutional and policy analysis. The last number I saw, illegal aliens have 153,000 children a year or so in the United States. Talk about an incentive for illegal alien invasions of the United States. Get here, you have a child, and they are citizenship. And other countries do that, but they're basically loser countries, with all due respect. It's Canada and all these small countries here in the Western Hemisphere. No one in Europe does it. No serious country does it. And to the degree we do it, we're not being serious about our citizenship. So I'm glad President Trump did it, and we'll participate to the degree we're able in the legal fights about it. But it's a common sense approach by President Trump that unless you're here legally, in a permanent way as a non-citizen, if you have a child, your child is not an automatic citizen. Obviously, citizenship inures to your children if you're already citizens of the United States. But the idea that someone crossing the border illegally can have a child and the child immediately becomes a citizen, it's an absurd result. Now, there may be policy reasons for allowing that, but you'd have to change the Constitution. He really would have to change the Constitution. Granting pardons and commutations of sentences for certain offenses related to the events at or near the United States Capitol. Let's see what he said about that. Well, that was the pardon I talked about for the January 6 targets. This proclamation ends a grave national injustice that has been perpetuated, excuse me, you would think I'd know how to talk here, upon the American people over the last 4 years and begins a process of national reconciliation. Again, this proclamation ends a grave national injustice. Do you think it was a grave national injustice? I think it was. Now, the courts in here who are handling the January 6th, some of the liberal judges there were furious at President Trump for doing this. But the narrative about January 6th generally is a big lie from the Biden regime and the left. It's a big lie. And these folks were not treated fairly. They were punished for exercising their First Amendment protected rights. And to the degree they even did anything wrong, the whole process was compromised and tainted by nasty politics and selective prosecution. So good for President Trump. He gave an executive grant of clemency to Terrence Sutton and another police officer, Andrew Zabetsky, two D.C. police officers who were unprecedentedly charged and prosecuted by left-wing prosecutors here in D.C. Well, I think in the case, if I recall the story, Officer Sutton was chasing a man on a motorbike or a moped, and the guy was running from him and another car hit him and killed him. Like, a civilian hit the moped. And the cop gets charged for second-degree murder. And his colleague gets charged for some type of cover-up. The police department of D.C. praised President Trump for these commutations. So it was a pushback on the war on police here in our nation's capital. Defending women from gender ideology extremism, and restoring biological truth to the federal government. That's what he was referencing there. So this is the EO that basically says there are two genders and protects women in women's sports and makes it clear the federal government isn't going to start promoting or is going to stop promoting transgender extremist ideology in a way that harms women and children, especially. Ending illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based opportunity. So this is where he starts, as I said, rescinding all of these quota-like executive orders with quota-like or explicit quota requirements where, you want to get a contract, if you're a minority, you get a benefit, or you have to hire a lot of minorities, or other requirements requiring special treatment based on sex and race. We've got to stop that. Plus, it's going to save money. So not only is it a good thing in terms of the rule of law and the way our country should be run, it's going to save money. This is one of my favorites. Ending radical and wasteful government DEI programs and preferencing. You might want to bring that one up because I'm going to read from it. The Biden administration forced illegal and immoral discrimination programs going by the name DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, into virtually all aspects of the federal government. And you know, I talked about this, if I could say, in my new book for Judicial Watch, Rights and Freedoms in Peril. And I gave the background. This is a great book. You should get it. It tells you why Trump is doing what he's doing and what else he needs to do to restore our constitutional republic. The embers had barely cooled on the George Floyd riots of 2020 when there suddenly emerged a demand for a national racial reckoning. In addition to demands to defund police departments, remove the names and images of inconvenient historical figures from public spaces, and form commissions to assess how many millions of dollars should be paid out in reparations for slavery, a new equity regime took hold across government, academia, and corporate head offices. This new regime, born from the principles of critical race theory, was called diversity, equity, and inclusion, and quickly became the defining organizational purpose behind many American institutions. On his very first day as president in 2021, Joe Biden promised to advance an ambitious whole-of-government equity agenda. As I've often observed, again, you can get this in my new book, Rights and Freedoms in Peril, DEI was a core, critical race theory was a core a value of the Biden administration. Everything the government was doing was supposed to be, all actions were to be done through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion, critical race theory. And just like that, Trump shut it all down with his new executive orders. The Director of Office Management and Budget, assisted by the Attorney General and Director of the Office of Personnel Management, shall coordinate the termination of all discriminatory programs, including illegal DEI and diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility mandates, policy, programs, preferences, and activities in the federal government under whatever name they appear. To carry out this directive, the Director of OPM, with the assistance of the Attorney General as requested, shall review and revise as appropriate all existing federal employment practices, union contracts, and training policies or programs to comply with this order. Boy, he's cleaning house. And as part of this executive order, the rule has gone out. Not only are every DEI employee of the federal government, they've been placed on administrative leave. And they're facing being removed from the government entirely, fired or laid off. So a massive savings is underway. In addition, the left is really angry at this because the Trump administration has told everyone in the agencies, if you're aware of someone trying to engage in DEI type activity using other language to disguise it, let us know. And the left thinks that's outrageous that the Trump administration would try to stop woke racism, discrimination, segregation, hostility, and divisiveness, all of which are certainly discrimination's illegal, workplace, hostile workplace atmosphere for people based on race because of this vicious, racially motivated woke DEI. All of that needs to be shut down under law. So this is a challenge to the deep state. DEI, if left unchecked, would destroy the country. What Trump is doing here is a core, frankly, a core duty of his under the Constitution in terms of protecting the United States of America and our constitutional system. DEI is another name for Marxism. It's a vehicle to destroy the republic. Another executive order, return to in-person work. This one's an one-pager. This one's easy. So a lot of the federal government isn't working in the office anymore as a legacy of COVID. So they're even going beyond it. They're taking all necessary, he's directing the agencies to take all necessary steps to terminate remote employment where it's appropriate. I mean, there are empty buildings here in Washington, D.C. as a result of the government employees not showing up. Now, I live and work in D.C. and you just know a lot of government workers. We share office space. They're in our building. They're all around. I mean, it's the company town in that regard. Now, what happens is when the president issues rules like this, the left goes crazy, the public employee unions go crazy, the Democrats go crazy, their media allies go crazy. But in the end, most of these government employees, I mean, there'll be people who don't want to comply and will attack Trump and try to subvert the process. But most people will work where they're told to work. It's not a big deal. So this is important in terms of getting better efficiencies from federal employees. But it's not going to be as disruptive as the left likes to pretend, because most of these people are just working, and they'll work where they're told to work. Now, are they going to I wish I could work from home? Probably, but that's life, and life will go on. Declassification of records concerning the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and the Reverend Martin Luther King. So this is a transparency initiative by President Trump, and obviously there have been folks who have been interested in that. Certainly we have. We sued on behalf of a journalist to try to get access to records related to the JFK assassination that were, I think, in the files of RFK. And we have a FOIA now pending for the JFK assassination file. So it'll be interesting to see what's released here. Holding former government officials accountable for election interference and improper disclosure of sensitive government information. So, as Judicial Watch exposed, the CIA, working in concert with the Biden campaign, organized this letter by 51 former intelligence officials, all of whom I think had security clearances, to throw cold water on the Biden laptop story by falsely suggesting that the material was false and the part of a Russian disinformation campaign. And what they did was they used the credibility of their national security clearances to lend campaign support to Joe Biden. And Joe Biden cited their false material or their false letter in the debate with Trump. Judicial Watch sued for information on this and found the CIA rushed through the pre-publication review process of that letter in a way that would never have been done unless they needed to provide campaign support for a candidate they liked. Again, further indication that the deep state hated Trump. And what Trump has done was, we saw what you did there, security officials. You're losing your national security clearance. Important executive order in that regard. National security is damaged by the publication of classified information. Wait, let me get to the quote here I want to go. The signatories willfully weaponized the gravitas of the intelligence community to manipulate the political process and undermine our democratic institutions. The fabrication of the imprimatur of the intelligence community to suppress information essential to the American people during a presidential election is an egregious breach of trust reminiscent of a third world country. Think Trump is right. These people can't be trusted. And if you can't be trusted, you're going to get a national security clearance. It's simple as that. I'm sure they'll sue. One of them will sue to get the national security clearances back. But he did the right thing here. Ending weaponization of the federal government. So obviously he's stopping the weaponization of the federal government. He's been a victim of it. Interestingly, he ordered also a study, or at least an analysis, to review the activities of all departments and agencies exercising civil or criminal government authority in the United States, including but not limited to the Department of Justice, Security Exchange Commission, and Federal Trade Commission, over the last 4 years, and identify any instances where there is departments or agencies' conduct appears to have been contrary to the purposes and policies of this order, and prepare a report. So what I like about that is that's the beginning of a prosecution. Now, if I were Trump, I'd just appoint a special counsel to investigate this, separate and apart from the FBI and the State Department. Investigate. Jack Smith wasn't pardoned. Alvin Bragg wasn't pardoned. Fannie Willis wasn't pardoned. All of them should be subject to investigation. Reforming the federal hiring process and restoring merit to government service. No more special hiring for people based on race and sex and other characteristics that are discriminatory. Simple. Establishing and implementing the President's Department of Government Efficiency. So this was interesting because I was curious how that was going to work, because there was talk of this Department of Government Efficiency, and the question is, was it going to be a nonprofit? Was it going to be an entity outside the government? Was it going to be within the government? How was it going to work? And the challenge for them, if it was a government nonprofit, if it was a nonprofit separate from the government, they really wouldn't have any, at least my understanding of the law, it would be harder for them to have any influence on government operations. They would have no more government influence than we would. Now, if they had more government influence, I guess it wouldn't be the end of the world, but it would be kind of hard to manage. And if they're advising the president, and there are all sorts of people involved in the advice of the president, there's this law called the Federal Advisory Committee Act, which could be used to constrain their activities, because that law is a law that says that when the government creates what is called a Federal Advisory Committee, there has to be transparency and an effort to encompass all views in an advisory committee designed to advise the President of the United States, which is a transparency law. And we've sued the Cheney Energy Task Force under that. Now, they've avoided having to deal with that by making the Department of Government Efficiency essentially an office of the White House. So that's what's interesting about that. So they don't have to worry about the Federal Advisory Committee Act. And now supposedly Elon Musk has an office in the White House. So we'll see. Maybe, I'm hoping there's a lot more government efficiency as a result of this executive order. And of course we have these executive orders about the border. Declaring a national emergency at the southern border of the United States, securing our borders, protecting the United States from foreign terrorists and other national security and public safety threats, protecting Americans' people against invasion, etc. And that's the other big news this week. This is just, these are just like the 5 or 6 on the invasion I picked out. Now, you may remember a few weeks ago, I commented based on reports as follows on Truth Social and on Twitter. Let's bring that material up. Do we have that one? About what? Oh, there it is. Good news. Reports are the incoming Trump administration prepared to declare a national emergency and will use military assets to reverse the Biden invasion through a mass deportation program. And President Trump, a few weeks later, go back to the tweet, subsequently retweeted it and said, "True!" 3 exclamation points. And the media was all excited because he had confirmed military involvement in turning back and reversing the Biden invasion. Well, it was truer than true because now it's happening. Look at these photos released by the White House that I tweeted. Look at that. These are military transport planes being used to remove illegal aliens. There are other reports that the Trump administration plans to move as many as 10,000 troops to the southern border. They're going to be using military transports, military bases perhaps, and other federal assets to house illegal aliens that are apprehended and need to be housed while they wait deportation. These executive orders prevent the asylum abuse that Biden allowed to happen that resulted in the invasion of the United States by, I don't know what the number is. The media versions of the number, to me, always lowballs it. So I'm going to say 12 to 15 million at least, just in the last 4 years. So the deportations, the mass deportation has begun. And there's a video of this guy, a Haitian illegal alien criminal, complaining. Did we have that video?
Within moments, the officers are on the move, with eyes on their first target.
Looks like we got movement, target vehicle coming out.
They quickly take him into custody. He's an MS-13 gang member wanted in El Salvador for aggravated murder. And he has an Interpol red notice out for his arrest.
We are targeting very violent threats to our community.
I'm not going back to Haiti.
One of those threats is this illegal alien from Haiti. ICE says he's a gang member with 17 criminal convictions in recent years.
Trump, you feel me? Yo, Biden forever, bro. Thank Obama for everything that he did for me, bro.
So there you got it, right? The illegal alien criminal knows who butters his bread, Obama and Biden. And they're mad at Trump. So this is a strong start to the Biden, to the reversal of the Biden invasion. And there are millions more. Now, Tom Homan has said they're going to initially focus on illegal aliens who are also criminals in terms of having other criminal conduct on top of their illegal presence here in the United States. But he's also made it clear that just because you haven't committed another so-called crime, you're free and clear. Because what happens under the Biden regime is they say, well, we're going to focus on really serious criminals. And they define serious criminals as like a terribly small number. And they refuse to deport anyone else, even if they know they're all unlawfully present. That's not going to happen anymore, at least as much as Tom Homan has described and these EOs described under the Trump administration. So the invasion is being reversed as we speak. That is so important to the future of the United States and the safety and sovereignty and frankly our economy in terms of the costs. It's remarkable how much is being done in just the first week of this Trump administration. You know how many executive orders he issued on his first day in 2017? You know how many? One. You know how many he did on his first day in 2025? 26. 50 plus, as I said, over the last 2+ days. So more is coming. The administration seems to be firing on all cylinders. And not only are they targeting illegal aliens, but they're also targeting their enablers. And the administration has made it clear through a memo issued by the Justice Department that local and state officials who obstruct federal immigration law through sanctuary policies and decisions and other activities to undermine the rule of law should be criminally investigated and prosecuted where appropriate. Which is exactly right. We wouldn't have, one of the I shouldn't say we wouldn't have, because the Biden open borders policy was just so extreme. But the illegal alien policy, the illegal alien crisis is worse, the invasion is worse because of sanctuary cities. Every major city in the United States is a sanctuary city. So you can have a wall 100 feet high, but if once you're here, you essentially will never get deported. And not only that, but you'll be harbored, in effect, in various states and cities. You get to get a driver's license, you get money, all sorts of things. Stop. Vetting is illegal, it's got to be prosecuted. Why would... everyone should follow the law, right? Even non-citizens present in the United States. But can't you see how that's a perverse incentive to have illegal aliens come here and reside here illegally? And to that, and along those lines, again, Judicial Watch simply never stops. We filed a lawsuit against the city of Chicago, specifically the mayor's office, for records on his pledge to essentially resist the rule of law, specifically Trump's mass deportation efforts. The mayor is a radical leftist. His name is Brandon Johnson. And this press conference, he describes his resistance.
The incoming administration is not just a threat to Chicago, but a threat to what is sensible about this country. And as mayor of the city of Chicago, we're not going to bend or break or cower to someone's threat. We're going to stand up and unite around our shared values, and they have my assurance that I'm going to protect the families of this city.
He went on to say, either in this or another press event, city officials will continue to shield all immigrants in Chicago from federal agents, regardless of whether they are citizens, permanent residents, or asylum seekers, despite the election of President-elect Donald Trump. Johnson also said he was prepared to fight any effort to stop federal funds from flowing to Chicago because it will not cooperate with mass deportation efforts, and would work to stop the arrival of immigration agents. So it sounds to me like he's committing or is committed to obstructing justice and misusing federal funds. And we asked for records about these statements. Tell us about your efforts to destroy the United States by open borders policies and sanctuary policies. And they didn't give us any records. We're working with the firm Chalmers, Adams, Becker, and Kaufman, who filed the lawsuit on behalf of Judicial Watch in the Circuit Court of Cook County after the mayor's office failed to respond to a November 27, 2024 FOIA request for records of communications of Mayor Johnson or his designated representatives about plans or preparations to resist federal efforts to enforce immigration laws or not cooperate with the Immigration and Customs Enforcement deportation plans. And they said they didn't have any records. So which is it? Was he just blowing smoke, or are they hiding records? Either way, it's a scandal. I guarantee you there are records. We've been around the block many times on government records. Thousands of times on government records. So when a mayor makes a statement like this, there has to be government records about what he's saying and what he's planning. As I said, the new Justice Department, and this is a specific policy, they're directing federal prosecutors to investigate and consider prosecuting, quote, resistance, obstruction, and other non-compliance with lawful immigration-related commands and requests from federal authorities. Now, of course, you know, law-breaking and helping aliens invade the United States is expensive. Chicago spent $574.5 million in sheltering migrants, which is the new term for illegal aliens here. As I say in our press release, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson announced himself and his city government to be outlaws on illegal immigration, as they plan to help illegal aliens resist the rule of law. Sure enough, this scandal is worsened by the evident cover-up of the full scope of Mayor Johnson's lawlessness, which Judicial Watch aims to remedy with our open records lawsuit. And our longtime colleague out in Illinois, one of our lawyers that we use often in Illinois, Christine Svensson, great lawyer, is helping us with this lawsuit. And we've got other FOIA requests. I think we may have some other lawsuits in the mix, I'm not sure, on other sanctuary city mayors and leaders who are attacking the federal government and planning to thwart and undermine the rule of law by their own admission. Judicial Watch has been in the forefront of challenging sanctuary policies. It's legally difficult to do. We're glad the Trump administration is willing to prosecute over it. But it's a terrible, these policies are terrible because they so enable so much dangerous activity. It puts people's lives at risk. These sanctuary policies, for instance, often prevent dangerous criminals from being quickly given over to ICE once they're released from local prisons. Because of these sanctuary policies, for example, someone will get out of jail after engaging in the most heinous of crimes, and even the Biden administration complains they weren't being told. And these people are led onto the streets when they otherwise can and should have been deported. Huh. I'm glad Trump is getting to it. Tom Holman and the DHS. So I talked about the January 6 pardons. Now, by contrast, you had the illicit pardons, as I believe them to be, by President Biden, including a pardon during the last 15 minutes of his presidency of his family members. Let's bring that pardon up. That's a really outrageous one. Be it known that this day, I, Joseph R. Biden Jr., President of the United States, pursuant to my powers under Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1 of the United States Constitution, hereby have granted unto James R. Biden, Sarah Jones Biden, Valerie Biden Owens, John T. Owens, Francis W. Biden, a full and unconditional pardon for any nonviolent offenses against the United States, which they may have committed or taken part in during the period from January 1st, 2014 to the date of this pardon. He gave the same type of pardon to Fauci, again going back to 2014. Who else? Milley, who engaged in what looks to be treasonous activity by telling the Chinese, don't worry, if we're going to attack, I'll let you know. Should be court-martialed for that. And then, of course, you've got the January 6th related pardons, which are completely crazed. This pardon to, I don't know to who, the members of Congress who served on the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. What attack? the staff of the select committee. Who's on the staff? Well, who? And the police officers from the D.C. Metro Police Department and the U.S. Capitol Police who testified before the select committee. So if they committed perjury, they can't be prosecuted? And who's on this list? We don't know. And that raises the question, are these pardons licit? Or are they illicit? Are they valid or are they not valid? And I posted a few tweets on this. We've been around the block on pardons before. I mean, we sued or litigated or tried to stop the Clinton pardons issued at the last minute. And here's a tweet I posted, or tweets. Well, this is this is a good comment. Joe Biden pardoned cop killers Liz Cheney and Adam Smith. He did. He pardoned. By the way, the other pardon he issued, or commutation, was for Leonard Peltier, who murdered 2 FBI agents, shooting one while he was laying unconscious in the head, and the other in the face as the guy went like this to stop him from being shot, stop himself from being shot. He released him from jail. So let's click on this tweet here, the January 20th tweet first. Let's bring that up. So let's play the video. I forget what I said in the video here. So I tell you, if Biden preemptively pardons Milley in a way that I think is unlawful, they really should challenge it with a court-martial. And there's more reason to court-martial him. And Judicial Watch just filed a lawsuit. Yeah, so, you know, I'll talk about Milley in a second. Let's go back up. So this is what I said about Pardongate. Donald Trump should ignore the preemptive blanket pardons just issued by whoever is running the Biden White House. Well, that's another question, right? Who is running the Biden White House, or was running the Biden White House? Did President Biden have the mental capacity to sign off on these pardons? I don't think so. But that's one other issue. Specifically, President Trump should immediately court-martial Milley and proceed as appropriate in criminally investigating Fauci and anyone else on Biden's list. The blanket pardons issued by Biden are invalid and constitutional nullities and should be considered to have no legal force or effect. And I followed up with the following tweet. Go back. One can't issue a pardon without listing the offense. A pardon for nothing is a pardon for nothing, right? It's kind of axiomatic. The Biden blanket pardons are empty sets, legal nullities that are unenforceable. Do you remember empty sets from school? I do. I was asking my colleagues who are a little bit younger than me. They don't know that. They don't know about empty sets, or they weren't taught that. But you remember the empty sets? Remember the brackets and in math, and you know, we had the empty set, the null set as it was sometimes called. And that's, to me, is what these pardons are. So there are no offenses listed. So how are they enforceable? And in the case of those January 6 pardons, they don't even list names. So is President Trump supposed to go and figure out who the pardons apply to? No. He should tell the pardon attorney and the Justice Department to stop processing them immediately and presume them to be invalid. And the question is, how is it tested? You test it by prosecuting or criminally investigating the areas in which these people might be defendants. I mean, I don't say, oh, well, now Biden, my view isn't you say, well, okay, we're going to prosecute Fauci and start investigating because his name is Fauci. No, you investigate issues that Fauci might be involved in, not because he might be involved in, but because you know there generally could be crimes, meaning the fraud involved in this funding of gain-of-function research, contrary to policy and federal grant guidelines, potential perjury by Fauci and others. Let them raise it as a defense. And then you argue that this is not a valid pardon because there's no offense listed. Essentially, Biden was relying on Trump to effect the pardon. And Trump doesn't have to do that under precedent. And with Milley, Proceed with a court-martial, as I said in the video. Test it that way. And with Milley specifically, there could be punishments for his misconduct short of a criminal offense that can be pursued by Pete Hegseth, assuming he's confirmed as Secretary of Defense. Joe Biden, as President Trump noted, wasn't pardoned. Investigate Biden's crime family and Joe Biden's involvement in that. The immunity ruling by the Supreme Court doesn't protect Joe Biden from prosecution for private behavior. The same goes for Hunter. He had a similarly broad blanket pardon. Those are not valid. And, you know, I looked at a Supreme Court decision on the scope of the pardon power, and it was interesting because the language here, and you can find it, you'll see what I mean. I think I'm fairly describing it, but I warn you, you should go look at it to make sure I'm right in my description here. But it talks about how the pardon really allows the prosecution of someone up into conviction, but the pardon erases the possibility of any sentence. Now, if that's what the court ruled, and I'm accurately describing it, that would be an interesting process too, even for these individuals. But let's say the pardons are valid, right? We can fairly interpret them as confirming, if accepted by these individuals, which they have been, largely as best I can tell, as confirmation of illicit or criminal conduct by everyone who got the pardons. So President Biden has confirmed the January 6th committee was a criminal enterprise. Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Benny Thompson, Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, all those on the January 6th committee. There are probably other names I'm missing. Was Jamie Raskin on the committee too? I think so. They were engaged in a criminal enterprise that should be prosecuted. That's what this pardon says. Fauci is essentially confirmed as a criminal, one might argue. Oh, that's Milley. Same goes for Milley, Fauci, etc. The Biden family itself. As I said, unless there's a federal offense, the pardon's not valid. To the degree it has any validity, there has to be a crime at issue that could be prosecuted. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say this is a valid pardon while pretending there's no crime at issue. And if there are crimes at issue, there are, assuming that it's valid and prevents them from doing what I suggest should be doing, serious criminal investigations, and Trump should ignore the pardons. But let's say they don't agree with my aggressive interpretation here, right? My advocacy. What they should do then is see what other punishments can be meted out. As I highlighted for Milley, Schiff, should he be thrown out of the Senate? Raskin, should he be thrown out of Congress? Out of the House? Fauci, should he be denied his pension through administrative investigations and proceedings? I don't know. But we need full justice and full accountability. And these pardons should be no bar to getting them. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not especially brilliant. And my point is, what I'm talking about, there are lots of smart people in Washington, D.C., presumably also in the Trump administration, who know exactly what I'm talking about in terms of what possibly could be done short of criminal investigations or prosecutions of these people. My point is, if I can think of it, there are a lot smarter people out there who have a much better understanding of personnel issues and regulatory, administrative law and punishment and crime and such, they can get some accountability done. Because the American people want it. Trump was elected to get accountability. And I'm sure he wants it. That's why I think he slyly mentioned that Joe Biden wasn't pardoned, because the elephant in the room that was left unsaid was that he should be criminally investigated. As he said at the beginning of his speeches, they tried to jail and kill me. And I hope that that's on the forefront of his mind when he directs investigations and criminal investigations and requests them, as he should. I think he should get personally involved in directing these investigations, as I've been saying, appointing special prosecutors or asking and directing agency heads to investigate, as he has begun to do with the executive orders. So, as I said last week, Judicial Watch has got a lot of work to do. I just talked about one lawsuit. We have nearly 75 lawsuits, probably active now, most of which are against the federal government for FOIA records on the deep state abuses of Trump, on the censorship operations that Trump has now shut down through his executive orders, on the border invasion, on DEI, on election integrity. All that work is going to continue. We've got 3 lawsuits to clean up the voter rolls in Illinois, Oregon, California. We have lawsuits challenging the counting of ballots that arrive after Election Day. We have more litigation planned in the election law area. We have a lawsuit against reparations, lawsuit for teachers fired for speaking out on basic public policy issues, been targeted for firing by school districts in retaliation. We've exposed, as we describe in the book, virtually everything we know about what Fauci was up to. Exposed so much of the DEI obsession and corruption in our military. So we're going to be pushing and pushing and pushing. We represent Ashley Babbitt's estate, her family, her husband, in a $30 million wrongful death action against the federal government. I can't imagine President Trump's going to defend Ashley Babbitt's shooting, so we'll see how that gets handled. And in the meantime, you have the fights in the Senate for the confirmation of President Trump's President Trump's cabinet. The leftists and Senate Democrats are stalling and delaying. Have already stalled the nomination and confirmation of Pete Hegseth, John Ratcliffe, Pam Bondi. All of these folks should have been voted on already. Hegseth may be voted on as I speak. So there's been no one watching the store at the Justice Department in the full-throated way. No one's been watching the store at the FBI in a full-throated way. Same goes for the Defense Department. It's dangerous. And then, of course, Congress has got to curtail the spending that's destroying our republic by undermining our currency and increasing costs for every American. There's so much to be done. And we'll be rooting for Trump as he does the right thing, trying to highlight when he does the wrong thing so he fixes it. And as I said on the radio, this weekly update, I have no doubt that Trump would not be president. And we didn't do this to make sure there'd be an election result, but the consequences of what we did helped stop the steal and helped stop him from being thrown in jail and worse. And we only do that with your support. So if you like what you're hearing and you want more of it, you want more lawsuits for the rule of law, more lawsuits to protect our sovereignty, to clean up our elections, to stop censorship, stop woke racism, etc., then support Judicial Watch. Go to judicialwatch.org, make a donation, judicialwatch.org, And if you can't make a donation, then share this video, share information about what Judicial Watch has uncovered, and just get the word out. And of course, prayers are always nice as well. And with that, I wish you the best, and God bless you and God bless America. I'll see you here next time on the Judicial Watch Weekly Update.